Hey, how's it going everyone? My name is Shimmy and welcome to That's What I Call Soccer. In today's video, I'm going to be giving my reactions to Game Week 1, where we take a look at the team I rolled out and how they performed. We'll take a look at Game Week 1's Dream Team, and we'll also do a segment I call Heroes and Zeros, where we look at players from each position that performed well and that disappointed their managers in Game Week 1. Before we move forward, if you like this type of content, please make sure to like and subscribe. I will be posting multiple videos a week on MLS Fantasy, and I think you guys will find this channel really helpful in staying up to date on everything going on in fantasy in order to improve your rank the best you can. So taking a look at my team here, I think I got off to a pretty good start with 72 points in Game Week 1. Now, one thing I vowed to do better this season was pay attention to lineups better. One thing that I wish MLS did similarly to Premier League is have standardized roster drop times. Premier League teams drop their rosters an hour before kickoff every single game. But with MLS, there isn't really a set time on when those rosters drop. So if you're not paying attention super closely, you can miss some things. And that's kind of the case here. I was at the tailgate for the Union game. The music was going, the drinks were flowing, and I just wasn't really paying attention. And before you know it, there was 4 minutes before lockout, and I realized I hadn't actually executed the plan I had, which was to take Braza off my team completely and replace him with a $4.0 million scrub so that I could use the money elsewhere and just roll Stuver as my only goalkeeper for the week. But because of everything going on and being down at the stadium and the tailgate and not having any service with all the people there, I missed that move and I was stuck with Braza on my starting 11, only getting 1 point and leaving 4 points on the bench with Stuver having 5 points for my goalkeepers. It honestly was a pretty disappointing start for the fantasy season, but I'm shaking off the rust just like everyone else, so I'll let it slide this week, and I'm just going to work really hard on watching lineups and paying attention to things closer next week. And I noticed at the game that if I just step off for a second, I usually can get service enough to change my lineups. It's kind of annoying to do during the game, but it is what it is. Moving on to defense, my first defender, Kai Wagner, he was really unfortunate not to keep the clean sheet, conceding an own goal. He didn't have very many bonus points and only had 4 points for the week. It is a little bit disappointing, and the reason is because he's one of the highest priced defenders in the game. And usually if Philly scored 4 goals, he's got at least 1 assist on those. But unfortunately, he didn't have any assists in this game, so he didn't keep the clean sheet, so he only gets 4 points. My next defender is someone I tinkered in. Once I saw that Hebert was starting for Seattle over Real Ruidíaz, it allowed me to have some more money to use elsewhere. So I upgraded Reagan to Nuhu because Nuhu plays as a fullback and gets up the pitch a little bit more and has the potential to get an assist here or there. But Seattle was able to keep the clean sheet. Nuhu got a bonus point or 2 for a total of 9, and I'm pretty happy with that. And because I had Burks on my starting 11 from Chicago this week, who was on a bye, it allowed me to run an auto-roo with 2 defenders on my bench. Here's where I did some more tinkering. I had John Gallagher on my bench initially, but because he wasn't starting, I decided to go with Kolmanic. And because Odmanson didn't start for NYC, I decided to switch Odmanson for Bill Tuiloma. Both Kolmanic and Bill Tuiloma got 4 points, so it's a toss-up there. It doesn't really matter. One of their points will count towards my total score, and the other one goes to waste. But the reason I'm kind of frustrated is because once Gallagher came on the game, he actually did end up scoring. It's kind of frustrating that he didn't start and that I didn't keep him because he did end up scoring, but it's just a few points missed. It wasn't the biggest deal. There was a lot of defenders that scored more than him, so that's kind of where I'm more disappointed, is that I didn't hit on one of those and that Kai Wagner only got a 4 and all my other defenders got a 4. Moving on to the midfield, we'll start with Ojeda from Orlando. He was only $6.5 million, so we weren't expecting too much from him, although we thought there was a pretty decent chance of him getting a goal or an assist, considering how well Orlando's offseason has been and how they've looked in preseason. But he was only able to have 1 bonus point for a total of 3 points this week. Again, because he's $6.5 million, you're not too disappointed, but he was owned by about 10% of people or so, so it is kind of disappointing. Next, we got Austin's Sebastian Driussi, and while Austin didn't have as easy as a time as we thought, and actually ended up losing to St. Louis City in St. Louis's first match of their MLS career, Driussi was able to score a goal and get us 8 points for the week. At one point earlier in the week, I did have the captaincy armband on Driussi, but I had removed it and moved it to Lucho at some point when I had heard rumors that Houston may be missing a bunch of people from their starting 11. But that's another thing that I kind of messed up on Saturday while I was at the game and didn't really have service, and you know, the tailgate was going on and the march on in the stadium was happening. I didn't make sure to check who I had the captaincy on, and I knew that I wasn't as high on Acosta once seeing Houston's lineup, but I forgot to make that switch. Driussi gets 8 points. I honestly really didn't even consider Gazdag as a captain, to be completely honest, which obviously was the biggest mistake. But yeah, left it on Acosta. He had 3 points, so a 6-point haul total. Not super impressive. I also wasn't super impressed with FC Cincinnati's attack in general. I thought Acosta wasn't playing in exactly the same position, and if that's the case, I'm not as high on him as I was last season. But Pat Noonan's a really good coach, and he'll make adjustments. So I think Cincinnati will be okay long term, but we'll have to see how they fare the first couple weeks and if they can find their footing or not. And another one I tinkered in once I had some more money to spend from moving Hebert in and taking out Willy Agada was Nico Lodero. I thought Nico Lodero was pretty unlucky not to have a couple assists, but he did have a few bonus points for a total haul of 6, which we'll take. And lastly, in the midfield, we got Philadelphia's Daniel Gazdag off to a cracking start. 2 goals from the spot, added 2 assists from open play. Didn't have very many bonus points, but a total of 20 points for the week. And I'm really disappointed that I didn't even consider making Gazdag my captain. We know what Philadelphia can do in the attack. We know they haven't lost a game at Subaru Park in over an entire season now. And Gazdag has had an incredible record last season and is also on penalties. And it was a great pick. I'm upset that I didn't think about it more thoroughly. As I spoke on earlier, the last player that I tinkered into my lineup was Hebert. Once I saw that Raul Ruidiaz wasn't starting or playing at all, I thought that Hebert had a really good chance for an attacking return, whether it be a goal or an assist. He was able to have a goal, and he did add a bonus point or 2, I believe, for a total of 8 points. So we'll take that from a $7.0 million forward. And like I said, it allowed me to use some money elsewhere. And because of that, the players that I tinkered in actually had more players that I originally had in my lineup. So all worked out really well on that front. And the last player in my starting 11, another decision that I just barely missed, was Mikel Uwa, only having 3 points. That said, he did play really well. I thought he was pulling defenders out of their position, and I thought that allowed Julian Carranza to have the space to score the 2 goals that he did. So I think Mikel Uwa will be okay overall, but it would have been nice to have Julian Carranza in my lineup instead of Uwa, obviously with Carranza scoring 2 goals. Unfortunately, Carranza was just a little bit more expensive than Uwa, and that's why ultimately I had Uwa in my lineup. I was just priced out of Carranza by just a tiny bit of money. So yeah, overall, pretty good start. I think it's fair to say that I'm not going to win fantasy this year, which is good. Can just get that stress out of the way. Wasn't expecting that in the first place. I'm not here to win the league. I do have some goals, but it certainly wasn't that. So yeah, just getting that out of the way. Game week 1, I don't even have to think about that or stress about keeping pace with the people at the top. But one thing I'm excited about is getting a score well above the average. My goal every week is to hit that average and get above that. I feel that even if you had a slow start, if you hit that average point or just above in every week or most weeks, you're going to end the season with a pretty good score. And again, I think that's why this channel is going to be important and help people so much, is because you're going to be able to stay updated. You're going to be able to know what's going on and who's in form and who's in not. And you're going to be able to make those decisions to keep you consistent week in and week out and hitting that average and reaching above that. So yeah, I botched some decisions. I made some mistakes with setting my lineups, but still we come in at just over 1,900 overall out of over 12,000 players and just under 150 overall in the Union League. So pretty good start. I'm not upset with it. We move on. So now let's take a look at the dream team for game week 1. With our goalkeeper, we got Inter Miami's Calendar, who had a total of 10 points. In defense, we got Nashville's Walker Zimmerman with 14 points. Inter Miami's Sergei Kristoff matched that with a total of 14 points as well. Portland's Mosquera had 15, and New England's Henry Kessler, last-minute game winner down in Charlotte, also had 15 points. In the midfield, you got St. Louis City's Jared Stroud. The way he scored his goal was a bit controversial to some people, but he scored a goal nonetheless and 11 points. FC Cincinnati's Nwobodo also makes Game Week 1's dream team with 11 points. Atlanta United's Thiago Almada has 13 points, including a last-minute game winner from a free kick. And again, Daniel Gazdag had 2 goals, 2 assists for Philadelphia Union, total of 20 points. He will have the captaincy armband on him for a total of 40 points. At the forward positions, we've got Philadelphia's Julian Carranza with 13 points off 2 goals, and Seattle's Jordan Morris with 2 goals and 15 points. And that brings Game Week 1's dream team to a total of 171 points. What I thought was really interesting is that you actually could have had this lineup for Game Week 1. If I did the math correctly, which I don't always do, I believe if you had $4 million scrubs on your bench, you would have been able to afford this lineup. That being said, no one even got close to 171 points. The top leader in the league, I believe the top leader in the league had a great week with 112 points, but again, they weren't even close to the 171, which was a completely conceivable team. only having $100 million to start off with. And again, I think this is a testament to the fact that not just the players with the highest price point or with the highest point total from last year are the best players to put in and week out. You've got to be willing to look at these little differential picks and how they might have a good game when some of the top players aren't getting their returns. So moving on to the heroes and zeros segment, this is where I'll highlight 5 players from each position that I thought performed well or maybe disappointed a little bit, and we'll talk about a few from each of those positions. So starting with the goalkeeper zeros, we've got number 5, unfortunately, Andre Blake from Philadelphia. He is one of the more expensive goalkeepers at $7.0 million and was owned by almost 16% of managers this week. So not keeping that clean sheet on the unfortunate own goal and not really having much to do otherwise meant that Andre didn't have any bonus points and only had a total of 2 points for the week, which is pretty disappointing when you consider that he's $7 million and it likely meant you had to sacrifice money elsewhere in order to fit him in your team. Number 3, we've got Toronto's Sean Johnson. Toronto was on the road to DC, but I thought they had a really poor performance. Already see the shoulders and the head dropping from the players in Toronto. And on top of giving up a late goal, Sean Johnson didn't make many saves, only had 2 and no bonus points for just a total of 2 points. And number 1, I hate to do it to him. This is probably more for personal reasons. And when I say personal reasons, I mean me forgetting to switch my lineup. But for number 1, I've got to go with Luis Braza from NYCFC. Now, it's really not anything to do with him. I actually thought he played decently well, but unfortunately Nashville just kept coming and had a few decent chances. When I watched the highlights, I actually thought Braza made a few good saves, so I was surprised to see that he didn't have any bonus points. But yeah, just 1 point from Braza this week. Again, it's really not anything about him. We weren't expecting him to keep a clean sheet. You're probably at least a little disappointed that he didn't get a few bonus points for you. Moving on to the zeros from the defenders, at number 4, we've got Cascante from Austin. Now, I don't really think it's fair to call someone that got injured a zero, but being $6.0 million and being owned by 10% of the game and coming out so early with an injury, it would have been really disappointing to only get 1 point if you did have him in your team. I actually really think that the Cascante injury played a lot into that game. I think it really allowed St. Louis to take a break and catch their breath and really figure out what was going on. And you saw what happened once Keller came in for Cascante. And now Cascante is going to be out for an extended period of time, so I'm not really sure how Austin's defense is going to look moving forward. Number 3, we've got Philadelphia's Jacob Lesnes. Not only did they miss out on the clean sheet, but unfortunately it was Jacob Lesnes that contributed to the own goal. Now, it certainly wasn't one of the most embarrassing own goals I've ever seen, but they all count. It was kind of a ball just rolling through the box, and at the last second he put his toe on it, and it wrong-footed Blake, and yeah, it ended up being an own goal. So no clean sheet, negative points for the own goal, no bonus points. We got a 1 from Jacob Lesnes this week, who is a $7 million defender and was owned by just about 6% of managers. And the last one I want to highlight is Pedro Santos from DC. While I don't think many people were expecting DC to keep a clean sheet, I think because of the position that Santos plays in and how he gets up and gets forward in the attack, I think people were expecting a little bit more bonus points. But maybe the fact that he's listed as a defender means he's not hitting those stats that are needed to reach bonus points as a defender. And so, yeah, just 1 point from Santos this week. And he's a pretty expensive defender, so I'd be kind of disappointed if he was in my team. Moving on to the midfield, we'll start with one that I had, number 5, Lucho Acosta. He's a $9.0 million midfielder, and he was owned by just about 28% of the league this week. And he just really didn't look like the Acosta that we know and love. He didn't have any goals or assists, just 1 bonus point for a total of 3 points. We'll skip all the way up to number 2 with Paul Arriola from FC Dallas. He's another one I considered having in my team, having a pretty decent matchup against Minnesota at home. But Dallas really didn't show much in this game, and they ended up losing 1-0. And on top of that, Arriola didn't have any bonus points, so just a 2 from Arriola. And number 1, again, I don't want to call someone that got injured a 0, but the highest paid player in MLS, one of the highest priced players in MLS Fantasy, and we don't even make it through the first half of the first game of the 2023 season, and Lorenzo Insigne is being hauled off with an injury. He is $10.0 million, and he was owned by just about 14% of managers. So to come off before halftime and only get 1 point, I mean, you've got to be disappointed with that. Obviously, it's not his fault that he's been injured, but it's disappointing nonetheless, and it doesn't get results for fantasy. And to wrap up the zeros, we'll look at some forwards. Number 5, Inter Miami's Josef Martinez. I don't think he made it very far past the 70th minute mark. He didn't really have very many chances. No goals, no assists, no bonus points, just 2 points overall. Again, we'll take another jump up to number 3 with Cucho Hernandez. Now, I actually think Columbus looked pretty well and just ran into a pretty tough Philly team in game week 1 on the road at one of the toughest places to play. And Cucho was a little bit unlucky not to get a goal, having that ball go off of Glesnes' foot and be an own goal. But again, he's $9.0 million. He was owned by just over 9% of managers this week, and only getting 1 bonus point and 3 points overall has to be a little bit disappointing. That being said, I think he will be a good pick moving forward. And number 1, it's nothing against him, but $9.0 million forward from FC Cincinnati, Brendan Vasquez, owned by just under 31% of managers this week, had no goals, no assists, no bonus points, and just 2 points overall. Like I said earlier, FC Cincinnati just didn't particularly look like themselves, but I think Pat Noonan will make adjustments, so I think they'll be okay down the road, but we'll just have to keep an eye on them the next couple of weeks and see how they fare. Now let's talk about some players that did perform well, moving on to the heroes with the goalkeepers. Number 5, we got Minnesota United's Dane St. Clair. He was owned by under 3% of managers this week, which made him a huge differential, especially going down to Dallas. But they were able to keep the clean sheet. He only had to make 1 save. He did have a couple bonus points for a total of 9 points overall, which is a pretty good return from Dane St. Clair in week 1. Next, we'll talk about number 4, New England's Georgi Petrovic. Now, most people think he'll be one of the top candidates for goalkeeper of the year this season if he's able to stay in MLS past summertime, but he justified why people have those opinions in him again in game week 1, going down to Charlotte in front of a buttload of people in a hostile environment, keeping the clean sheet, having 4 total saves, 2 bonus points on top of that for a total of 9 points. And the last hero from the goalkeepers this week is Inter Miami's Calendar. Calendar was owned by just over 1% of managers this week, was able to keep the clean sheet, had 6 total saves, 3 bonus points, totaling 10 points overall, making the MLS Dream Team of the week. Looking at the defenders, we'll start with number 4, Nashville's Walker Zimmerman. He was pretty highly owned this week at just under 24%. Nashville was able to keep the clean sheet against NYCFC. Walker Zimmerman tacked on a goal just barely. Godoy tried to sneak in at the last second, but they did credit it to Zimmerman. And Zimmerman was able to tack on a bonus point as well for a total of 14 points in game week 1. Number 3, we've got a really great story with Inter Miami's Sergei Kristov. He's living in America to escape what's going on in his home country of Ukraine. Not only is he getting good opportunities with Inter Miami, he's making the most of them. Keeping a clean sheet, getting a goal, adding a bonus point for a total of 14 points as well this week. And the last hero from the defenders is New England's Henry Kessler. Not only was New England able to keep the clean sheet down in Charlotte, but Kessler was able to score a last-minute winner. He was able to tack on 3 bonus points on top of that for a total of 15 points, making him the best defender of the week. At midfielders, I want to start with number 4, Houston's Hector Herrera. Now, a lot of people, myself included, looked at Houston as being one of the weaker teams going into the start of the season, but I thought they looked really good on the road in Cincinnati, and Herrera was right in the middle of that. He didn't have a goal, but he did have an assist, 6 bonus points for a total of 11 points in the week. Number 2, we have Atlanta United's Thiago Almada, being $9.0 million and owned by just about 11% of managers. But Thiago Almada was able to score 2 beautiful goals, including a last-minute winner from a free kick. He was able to tack on 2 bonus points on top of that for a total of 13 points in the week. And our last hero from the midfielder, and probably our hero overall for the week, is Philadelphia's Daniel Gazdag. 2 goals, 2 assists, only had 2 bonus points, but a total of 20 points for the week. And the 21.77% of players that owned him in week 1 are really feeling the benefits. And if you had the audacity to captaincy, then happy days, you're off to a great start in the start of the season. And we'll wrap up this video with the heroes from the forwards. At number 4, we've got Seattle's Hebert. Like I said before, he was a player that I tinkered into my lineup once I saw that Raul Ruidiaz wasn't starting, only being $7.0 million and being owned by just about 3% of managers. I thought he'd be a really good differential and a player that was sure to get an attack in return, and he did get one. He was able to get a goal. I thought he could have had another. He didn't really have very many bonus points, but 8 points from a $7.0 million forward in game week 1 is something I can't complain about. Number 2, we got Philadelphia's Julian Carranza. As I explained earlier, I was just priced out of Carranza, and maybe if I had actually made that move of taking Breza out and replacing him for a $4 million goalkeeping scrub, I would have had money in order to move Ua up to Carranza, but that's all in hindsight now. Carranza still had a great week with 2 goals, a bonus point, and 13 points overall. And the last forward to talk about is Seattle's Jordan Morris. He was a little bit cheaper than other forwards in the game at only $8.0 million and was owned by less than 2% of managers, and he had 2 goals, 3 bonus bonus points for a total of 15 points this week. All right, so that puts a wrap on game week 1. I think we've got a better idea of how some teams are looking and how some players are fitting into lineups. And hopefully this video will give you some ideas to start constructing your team early on in the week. Like I said before, if you like this type of content, please make sure to like and subscribe and turn on that notification bell, as I am releasing multiple videos per week on MLS fantasy related content. And I do think this channel will help people stay informed on what's going on and who's in form and who's not, and what decisions to make to improve your rank week in and week out. I really appreciate everyone that's subbed and watched videos so far. I really just want to create a judgment-free community where people can speak their mind and have conversations about fantasy and what's going on around the league, and feel comfortable while doing so. I want people to feel like they can ask questions. I want people to feel like they can reach out to me to talk about their teams and what players they think are good picks. Please do that. My socials are in the bio. If you want to get in touch with me, please do. And be on the lookout for a video in a few days on my Game Week 2 preview and team reveal. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye.